All right, now on the Tennis Channel Inside In podcast, Mitch Michals from the Santa Monica studios. We're joined by reoccurring guest, one of my favorite people in tennis to talk to. You can pretty much see her everywhere there's tennis played. The Instagram bio just says tennis mostly. Enough said there. Blair Henley back on the show now, fresh off the Fed Cup tie in Florida. Blair, always a treat for me. Thanks for coming on the show.
Mitch, great to see you again. This has been a long time coming, so glad we're finally doing this.
Yeah, and I was a little worried because just if you're not on social media, Blair got shouted out by Pegula and Coco this week. So I thought I might lose her as a guest, but no, she's very reliable. But going mainstream, going big time, props for that. And just another great experience covering the United States women.
And props for them for just putting that on social media. I mean, I didn't even tag Coco in the photo that she just very nicely said, "We heart Blair." And I was like, I mean, people don't know this about me because I'm generally pretty smiley and bubbly. And I think the perception is possibly that I am happy most of the time. And I am. I have a lot to be thankful for. But I would say that in general, my baseline is kind of more on the pessimistic, harder side. Which I feel like I burst people's whole perception of me when I tell them that. But that warmed my cold, icy heart when I saw that, because I never expect that sort of thing. I go out and do my job, and I hope that over time you end up actually connecting with these athletes as people, not just the athletes, the people behind the scenes. That's one of the parts of my job that I love the most. And I feel like at this point in my life and my career, I'm seeing more and more. But to just feel like there is sort of a personal connection there means a ton, and that meant a lot to me. So sweet Coco and Jess, and man, the US is lucky to have them as leaders for American tennis right now on both the women's side and the men's side. I love Jess in her post-match interview. I'm already going to go on a tangent, but I thought this was great. She only had her first Billie Jean King Cup win, I think it was last year. Right. And so I mentioned that, hey, it wasn't long ago that you were the rookie on this team, and now you're the top ranked player on tour. And she goes, "I just want to thank you for saying that I am the top ranked player on tour, because people think it's just women, but no, it's the women and the men."
Yeah. She handles it great at everything, takes losses in stride. It's funny with everything, with about her place in the game, in society, with where she comes from. And yeah, that tour comment, it's just I know we're not unified ATP WTA for a lot of different reasons, some legit, some not, but there is some banner there, and she wants to let Frances and Taylor know, hey, I'm the top ranked player. But when she's not roasting Frances's jump shot, she wants to just get those digs in when she can.
Let me tell you though, she may roast Frances, but that was one of the first things I said to Jessie when I saw her in Delray, is before I left Houston, because I went, I was only home for a day and a half before I flew to Delray. Frances asked me, who of course won in Houston. He said, "So where are you going next?" You can always rely on Frances. Will always ask about your life, by the way. There are very few, I would say, professional athletes who will ask you questions back. Mm-hmm. Frances is one of them. And that's not to stereotype professional athletes. It's just you're in that zone where you're supposed to be asking them questions or whatever it is. It's I would say unusual for a player to be like, "So what's next for you?" Frances has done that since he was 18 years old. So he's like, what's coming up next? And I said, "Well, I'm headed to Florida for Billie Jean King Cup." And he said, "Oh, you get to hang out with the GOAT Pegula?" And I was like, "Yes, I do get to hang out. I don't know if we'll actually do any hanging out, but I get to at least spend a little bit of time with the person that apparently Frances and the rest of the United Cup team calls the GOAT Pegula." He could not say enough great things. She's the realist. She's the absolute realist. She's teaching him how to be his own agent. I don't know if you saw after Houston, he posted a picture in Chick-fil-A getting Chick-fil-A breakfast. And he's like, "Chick-fil-A, hook me up." And then he wrote a message, saying to Jessie, see Jess Pegula, I'm being my own agent. So man, Jessie Pegula just imparting her knowledge on both sides of the tour, and we love to see it.
Do you think where we are with women's American tennis, I mean, I don't want to say as good a place because we're just following the Williams sisters and that just historic run, but it's kind of insane that we're able to just have this new run. Like usually there's a dip is what I'm trying to say. Like Spain men's tennis notwithstanding, how do you follow Roger Federer? How do you follow different eras? And it's kind of just nuts that we have Pegula Coco to just run right into the Williams sisters, and the fact that they're willing to play these Fed Cup events, because a lot of top players, and understandably so, just can't commit or just won't commit to the grind of another international tie, not for ranking points, but here are girls just going for it.
Yeah, no, I think it's huge. And also the fact that the rest of that team was Sonia Kennan, who's been ranked as high as 4 in the world, still looking to find her form in the past year or two. Danielle Collins, who also maybe not playing her best tennis right now, but who's been ranked 7 in the world. Katie McNally, who has reached 2 doubles Grand Slam finals, and who is playing much better singles at the moment, by the way. I mean, it's pretty incredible what the depth that Kathy Rinaldi has to work with. And I actually asked her that in the last post-match interview. I said, Kathy, like, obviously this is great, but this makes your job harder, right? And she's like, yes, it's like one of the hardest parts of my job is trying to decide, which combination of players is going to make the best team, because you have so many to choose from.
Got some good doubles players on there too. We know Taylor Townsend, McNally was there as well. So there's opportunities galore. Collins, I just want to share my DC story because I don't have as many nearly as you.
I love it.
We were in San Diego, and it's known that she's a fearless player and she doesn't care. I was sitting with Kamal Murray. We were doing some production interview stuff, and it was about players that'll play anyone. And we're just like, yeah. And then there's DC, who will play just about anyone. She's stretching before her match. She hears us, just pops her head in. She's like, I'll play anyone. I'm not scared. And it just goes right back to stretching. I was like, that's a perfect DC story. Like, just unabashedly brave, whether or not she's playing her best tennis. So yeah, the depth is just outstanding for women's American tennis.
Yeah. And we mentioned off air, just the crowd in Delray. I wasn't totally sure what to expect. I've done, I did the men's tournament there for 6 years. So I've seen great crowds toward the end of the tournament. I've seen some thin crowds for the first few days of the tournament. And the turnout was really fantastic, even given what was a wild first day where there was rain coming in. I don't know if you
was aware.
You have not lived, Mitch, until you have been mid-ceremony, and the opening ceremonies for Billie Jean King Cup and Davis Cup for the US are pretty involved. I mean, there are flags, we've got a drum line, sometimes we have steam or pyro or something like that. And so and it's a heavy lift as far as the voiceover part goes, and that's what I'm doing. And so there is, I'm talking over a drum line. We've got walkout music. Side note, Team Austria walked out to Rock Me on the Dais, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah. Wow.
I thought it was a joke at first, and then they're like, it's not a joke. I was like, that's fantastic. So I'm talking over all that. There's like buzz in the stands. And I'm reading out loud Jessica's, Jesse's bio. I get to the end, from Buffalo, New York. And my producer is talking semi-frantically in my ear saying, we've got to go straight into evacuation read. From Buffalo, New York, Jessica Pegula. Ladies and gentlemen, we must ask that you leave. We actually had to ask them to leave the site. That was part of the emergency protocol. There's lightning in the area. Your lives are in danger. That we didn't actually say that, but that's essentially what we were saying. We went from like full drum line, like peak Jessica Pegula to
sirens going off
at the stadium. Yeah, it was. I actually looked up in time to see actually Jesse and Coco just like burst out laughing because it was almost comical. And thankfully, half an hour later, we get everybody back on court. Michaela Bryan sang the national anthem, talk about a full circle moment. And it was a great night of tennis. Coco, who had a ton of pressure, I felt coming in, hometown player, on paper, expected to win. Mm-hmm. And she came out and she performed, and as did Jessie, and she had this massive rush of people waiting to get autographs from her afterward. It just was I love so much when, the women's game is showcased and people appreciate the value that it brings, because it is so fun and it is so exciting and it's professional sport, and people who get that make me very happy.
I also feel like it's good to have players seeing the legends just speak and be there. So when you had Billie Jean King, when you had Chrissy Everett talk, just being around for that moment is good for just your professionalism, if that makes sense. Like, it was just great for players and the Austrian players too, to just be a part of those moments.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, having Billie Jean King anywhere, it's like automatically elevate whatever you're doing. But there was this dinner that I did not get to go to, but had I known it was happening, I might have, like, snuck in the kitchen, because they honored several former Billie Jean King Cup players in Delray Beach. And there was this sort of group dinner, and I don't know who started it, but the request was, can you tell a story from your time playing? And so Billie Jean King told a story, like the kind of stories that you would tell. Like, it makes me think of like my Rice Women's Tennis group chat, the ridiculous things that we did as a team, or that our coach said, or whatever, like those kinds of stories. Chrissy Everett was there, Andrea Jaeger was there, and these amazing legends and women who've experienced so much in their careers went up there and just told these behind the scenes stories. And I think it was a really cool experience for the younger American players.
I want to, on this show now, kind of go backwards, and you've had a lot of duties and jobs since the last time we've spoken. Of course, I can't leave out Indian Wells, because Stadium 3 is kind of your party zone. It's where it goes crazy. I was only there a few brief days, wasn't able to make it out. Although when I was there, walking into the main stadium, I heard the buzz of the Andreescu-Peyton Stearns match, and that kind of just got us going to a weekend like no other. I feel like you attract just chaos to that court, because it's always the latest. It's always the most bizarre. It's got the sound bites where you got Kvitova to say that, yeah, sorry, I agree with Medvedev. Like, these courts are slow and not my style. But what's it like being there and just embracing the chaos of Stadium 3?
It is kind of chaos, and I do kind of love it. It was, just to give you a little backstory, my producer on that court came from the world of the Olympics and figure skating. And Linda and Brenda, whose last name is, how are they escaping?
Fruitova.
Yes, thank you. Oh my gosh. So Linda comes out to play Meyer Sharif. I am a mess today. Clearly, I am not fully together.
It was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. She comes out to play Meyer Sharif and says to me, because I am the only person who looks like they're in charge over there. I don't know that I really look that way, but she looks at me and says, can I use the restroom? And I'm like,
I don't run this
tournament. Like, not my call. So she just turns around and books it. Well, there's poor Meyer Sharif sitting there getting asked for autographs, people taking selfies. And I'm like, so it's the Wild West out there. I have embraced it though. I love the matches that we get on that court. And we got some really, some barn burners out there this year. You mentioned the Andreescu match. Bianca is, and I think Peyton Stearns is on the way to becoming this, but Bianca is so Showtime. It's unbelievable. The electricity when she plays, she draws the fans like off the bat. People are there waiting for her to come to the court. And of course, I'm slightly partial, because at the end, she was like, I like your puffer coat, which
it was also freezing that weekend.
It was massive and obnoxious, and but no joke, it's probably my favorite thing that Fila has ever given to me. And I was like, thank you so much. People have given me a hard time for wearing this in Indian Wells. She's like, oh, like, girl, I'm from Canada and I'm a big fan. So I felt very justified by Bianca Andreescu, and I hope she feels better soon. It sounds like she is going to be back soon.
Yeah. Oh, I was also going to say too that Sakari loved it as well. And I was, it made sense, because she, after 6 espresso shots was like, I love playing on Stadium 3. She
has cut down.
Okay.
I don't know if you know this.
Probably doctor's orders, I would imagine.
Yeah, like legitimately, when somebody in her team saw the episode, they were like, that's probably not good. So apparently she's cut down on the espresso.
More with Blair Henley here on Tennis Channel Inside In. And another thing I want to mention, I know it was a long time ago, but you did one of the most remarkable things in tennis, is you got Barbora Krejcikova over to the masses for her personality. I don't know how you did it, but you found a way to showcase that at the WTA finals in Fort Worth, is where it started. the budding friendship that we didn't know we needed. So that's one of the cool things too, is just being able to showcase personalities that are more low key or that the masses don't know about. How did that come to be, and how did that start of you just finding her sitting in the same spot for every match?
This will forever be one of my favorite tennis stories. First of all, I just love the fact, I mean, it's not the first time I've seen a player watching a match while they're still in the tournament.
Mhm.
But usually they're hidden. They're sort of recessed up in the rafters. But she is literally right behind the court. And the way that the court was set up in Fort Worth, you weren't high off the court. I mean, you were like eye level with the players off the court. So where I was sitting had a great view of where she liked to sit and just started taking pictures. So by the third picture, I'm like, if I don't tell her that this is happening, it's a little bit weird.
That's what I was wondering, is when was she, I guess, in on it and embracing it?
So it was probably after like photo number 3. I saw her in sort of the bowels of the stadium. And I said, Barbora, you know that you're a star for your tennis viewing this week. And she said, no, I don't know. And so I pulled up my phone and showed her the thread. She got a kick out of it. We spent probably another 15 minutes just standing there in the hallway talking. And it was one of those moments. I think she has been someone who she has maybe felt that she was not as approachable as she actually is. And so I think that the fact that I just went up and struck up a conversation was like, hey, I'm taking photos of you.
Yeah, I mean, did you revitalize her singles career? Some people are saying that because she kind of did go on a tear at the start of 2023. And I just love the fact that she's, different in terms of how she plays on the court talking now. Like, she's a great doubles player, why she was at the year-end finals to begin with. But the fact that she approaches the game so differently, some days she's going to run into a player like Sabalenka yesterday, but she has a different approach, different style. And I think it's so refreshing to see.
Yeah, yes. And I gravitate toward that. I love that. And that's really how I see my job is, can I give these players a platform, or can I tee it up in a way that they can show their personality? And like I said earlier, it's one of the things that at this point in my career, it used to only happen on the court. And sometimes I'm enough of a familiar face for these moments to happen sometimes off the court as well. And I have so loved getting to know her. Her tennis mind is incredible. Like, talk about tennis IQ. Woof. If I had that much information floating around in my head, I would spontaneously combust on the tennis court. But she's incredibly smart on the court and off. And being able to show that she's really funny, extremely insightful. The fact that she just donated her the money that she received from the ITF to play Billie Jean King Cup to relief in Turkey and Ukraine. I mean, I just feel like she's a well-rounded human. And listen, the more we can showcase those people, the better.
It is just super refreshing that we have these different types of personalities. Like, some are, more highly strung, some are low key. I love, not knowing what Ostapenko is going to look like when she comes out onto the court. The possibilities are endless. It's a nice mix. And the most important thing, we were just having this discussion about Holger Rune, is that a lot of them have the game to back it up. That's where it has to start, is that you have to be winning some matches so we can keep talking about this.
Yes, absolutely. I'm just thinking back as you're talking about like the different types of players. One of my favorite interviews from Indian Wells, since we're still sort of, well, I guess, hang on.
Yeah.
I'm going back around the calendar. Barbora did make it to Stadium 3, which was a nice treat and really good to see her there. Also, I need to work on my line dancing, by the way, to wrap that topic up, because she put me to shame on the court. Clearly, she had more experience in that department than I did when I sort of forced her to line dance on the tennis court in Fort Worth. It was organic as I could have been, but like, she took it like a champ. She put on that cowboy hat. And to be clear, by the end of that Fort Worth tournament, we did get her a cowboy hat that fit her head. The day after the tournament ended, she was very disappointed because the one that she got for reaching the doubles final did not fit her. And she was like, this is like her goal, to walk away with a cowboy hat that fit. So the next day, I'm local. I took my girls, picked her up. We went to the cowboy hat store and she got a hat that fit her. So that tied our little Fort Worth experience up in a bow. And I'm glad she has a cowboy hat that fits her head.
I feel like the players enjoyed that experience playing in Fort Worth. And I know that a lot was made about the crowd support and maybe it wasn't promoted. I think there's two sides to it, right? Like the players enjoy these new markets and playing in popular cities that are quote unquote untraditional. But it is a problem to be solved, right? Like how can we grow the game in areas that are not traditional and people might not even know? It's like you go to tennis, you get hooked, you become a fan, but how do we grow it in untraditional markets is still an issue.
Totally. And you are correct that everyone from players to media to the teams to the tour even really liked Fort Worth. And I know we're going back to China, but I really do feel that if Fort Worth was given another shot at it, whether it's the WTA finals or another WTA event, I think that if it were promoted, if it had the chance to be promoted for a decent period of time, I think it could have been massive because the fans who were there were extremely invested and extremely loud. And I heard that after the event was over, after the finals, there were people who went to the box office and said, can I get tickets for next year? And it just makes me think like people don't know unless you show them, like, incentivize, get schools. That there are just a lot of things that I think had there been more time and maybe more funds, we could have maybe built a little bit more momentum, but it just was a tough scenario all the way around. But yes, it was, for those of us who were there, it was fantastic.
Last thing, I guess, on the state of Texas, the Houston Clay Court Championships. I know you're an optimistic person, mostly. There had to be some doubt that this tournament, like props to them just completing it, because I was worried. I thought cancellation was going to come, but going 2 matches each day, Tiafoe wins it, Etcheverry gets to the final. Just completing the event was remarkable in and of itself.
I didn't know it was possible, Mitch. I'm not going to lie. There had been prior tournaments. I've never had 3 washouts in a row. We got a tiny bit of tennis on day 1 of the string of 3 and literally 15 minutes of tennis in on the 3rd. And that was just to finish the first round. We finished the first round on Friday afternoon and it was packed. The stands were packed for the conclusion of round 1 on Friday afternoon. I think it was Thursday or Friday afternoon. All the days were blending together at some point, but such bad luck weather-wise. And I felt so bad for everyone because especially at a 250, it's so the team is so small and everyone has had their hands in every little detail of the planning and the special events that are involved. You hope the players are still, I don't know, not that you go to a tournament to have fun, but you hope that they're making the most of it. I felt really bad for them, but the fact that we played over 40% of the tournament in 2 days was a thing that I did not know you could do. And thank goodness we didn't have any conflicts with doubles. I think there would have potentially been an issue I guess maybe not, because the players could technically also play doubles. But I think if you had somebody in the semis, for instance, who was still in doubles, or even in the final who was still in doubles, that would have been a tough physical ask. But the fact that Etcheverry Tiafoe final was one of the best finals I've ever seen live, and it was the 4th match that both of them had played in 2 days, says something about the athletes and how incredible they are. It was riveting. And when I tell you that River Oaks crowd, Francis said it in one of his post-match interviews, it's like, I can hear you guys making your social plans. I can hear the champagne glasses blinking. They are literally on the court. The first row of boxes, to exit your box, you have to walk on the court to get out of it. And it is a social event for a lot of the people who come to watch. And so in general, there's always sort of a buzz. There was one night where it was Francis and Dustin Brown playing doubles, and I felt like I was at a baseball stadium because there was just that sort of buzz, and there was like a party, which if you ask Francis, he loves that. He thinks it's fantastic. That was the quietest I had ever heard that crowd was during that final. And it was a nighttime final, which, for the reasons that it sometimes gets a little bit more buzzy in that stadium at night, I was even more shocked that it was as quiet as it was. And it was also as loud as I've ever heard it, as far as the fans reacting to how good the tennis was. And I got to do sideline reporting there. So I'm literally sitting on the court. I just couldn't have envisioned a better finish. And I'm almost glad it was a night match. It was after the Masters was already over. I feel like it, for as rough as those few days of rain were, it finished in the absolute best possible way.
It was riveting stuff. You mentioned it, and I did think the crowd kind of locked in. They're like, okay, this is the final. Let's tone it down a little. But yeah, Francis is the one guy. Francis is the type of guy, I should say, that embraces noise and rowdiness. And I know some players wouldn't. Another player who actually didn't do that well, but Tommy Paul, you got to sit down with him, and it's so funny because I watched that, and it was a great job as always. He talked about art and different things that he's into. I talked to his coach, Brad Stein, a couple weeks ago. And one of the things that struck me is he said, for all that Tommy Paul gets in the, what he's thought of, he's got a very analytical brain. Like there's almost another side to him. And you, among others, are kind of, unleashing that to the masses. What was that experience like, getting to talk to Tommy Paul and hear about his other side?
I have a funny backstory on this one. So this is an event that happens every year. It's the Houston NJTL Gala fundraiser event. And every year it's sort of part of the deal that the tournament sends a player over to do a Q&A. This was the first time I had ever been the one sort of asking the questions, administering the Q&A, if you will, but I was given a run of show. And I was reading the email, and then I get to the part where we're slotted in, Blair with Tommy, 25 minutes. And like we're lucky to get 5 minutes with players normally. Like, 25 minutes on a stage at a gala with Tommy Paul, like great. I'm excited for it. I think this is going to be a unique opportunity to go more in depth, but also I'm thinking from his perspective, like poor guy. That's a long Q&A. And in sort of what could be a less comfortable, it's not like we're sitting in a room together. We're sitting on a stage in front of 300 people. So we arrive at the hotel. The tournament director, Bronwyn Greer, who is unbelievable in Houston and is really a big reason why players want to play that tournament, because her leadership is so incredible. We arrive there and we're like ready to go. We're within sort of 5-10 minutes of our walk-on time, from the run of show. And we're told we're running about 15-20 minutes late. And our slot, by the way, was 8:40 p.m. to 9:05 p.m. So it's already late. And Tommy had just flown in that day, I believe. And I, in my mind, am thinking, because, we come from the world of you don't keep players waiting. But that this person who was telling us we were delayed didn't seem particularly troubled by the fact that they were delayed. And I, in my head, am thinking, like, that's not good. Tommy was like, it's okay. I'll just go get a water from the bar. So he goes, gets his water. I sat with Bronwyn 15-ish, 20 minutes later. It's our time to go on. We got to go in depth talking about his personality, how he got started. He told the story about how after clay season last year, the way that he phrased it on stage is that my coach threatened to leave me. And it was very much sort of like, and it's funny how on tour, those relationships are like almost like a familial type of relationship. Yeah. And he's threatened to leave me. And I asked for clarification later in the week from Brad. I said, what, can you give me this from your perspective? And he said, yeah, last year at the beginning of grass season, Brad told me this. He said, I did not like the way that he was approaching tennis. And I gave him a few non-negotiables. And one was that he needed to compete every single day. He needed to compete. He also needed to respect the game, his team, and his opponents in every match he stepped out on the court. There were a couple of other things. Thank you to Brad for sending me a very detailed text, like detailing exactly what happened in this interaction. But to Tommy's credit, he made the adjustments, and we've seen what's happened over the past year. Just talking about the pictures of sheep that his mom is sending him or lambs, I guess, that are being born on their farm. Talking about being roommates with Riley Opelka and also liking Lucky Charms, talking about teaching his girlfriend Paige tennis. This is actually pretty funny. He's like, I kind of could do like the ground strokes, the volleys, but like we got to the serve I had no idea how to teach a serve. So I'm asking Brad, I'm asking people on the team, like, how do I teach
Just
this?
throw the ball up and hit it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So he said it made him think about the mechanics of tennis in a different way, having to teach a beginner, it was funny to hear him describe that. I joked, I was like, this is all being recorded. So choose your words carefully. But yeah, Tommy is so chill that I think people sometimes think he's flatline. There's like the question of like, is he alive? And the answer is, if you've seen him in a tight match, he's an incredible competitor. He's really exciting to watch. And personally, he's a total delight. My hope is though, that more people know that. Like on the way out of this event, I had more people say to me, well, I had no idea he was so lovely. That therein sort of lies the problem. And when you look at, again, Instagram followers, it's one of many metrics, but relatively speaking, he doesn't have a ton. And I really do feel like, and I'm hoping maybe the Netflix show can help a little bit with this and just getting to know these players and why people should invest, because there are more reasons than just his tennis that he is a fun player to follow.
He doesn't have that very gregarious personality, but yeah, it's the same reaction. Winning more matches and being more in the mainstream will help that. But same reaction after Australia. It was like, wow, I didn't know this guy was likable, good American, comes from a good family we know. So props to him. And again, great work there. I do want to wrap this up with a few different quick things here. Blair Henley on Tennis Channel Inside In. On the serious side, and I guess an emotional side, it's going to be tough to top, right? Being at the Laver Cup and watching that moment last year. That was hard. It was hard for a lot of us of a certain generation, but we all know what that moment is, like watching Roger go away and then watching Rafa's reaction to that. What was it like kind of being there, being in the building, experiencing just everything that we saw?
My lasting memory of that night will be, and for those who don't know, my job there is sort of the behind the scenes cell phone video person. So I am like in the middle of the tears. And as I mentioned earlier, am not a crier. I am just a little colder in that way. That sounds like a horrible way to describe myself, but it's probably true. And then I'm like, oh, wow, this is like hitting me. Once I saw Rafa sobbing, and then Andy was holding back tears. So I am holding my cell phone, if someone can envision this, trying to be as steady as possible, and also trying not to be intrusive in these really emotional, special moments. And I am like shaking, like if you have like water in your ear, it's like shaking the tears out of the sides of my eyes because I was like, I cannot be doing my job with like tears streaming down. It was incredibly emotional, and I think everyone there that night sort of had the feeling that we were experiencing something collectively that we will probably never, I don't know that we'll ever see anything like that in tennis again. It was just really, really special.
It was insane. And I've said this before, props, I don't know how he did it, but Jim Courier, just the best, how he was able to conduct that interview and just rein it in and also just navigate those waters. But yeah, look, whenever you say goodbye to a legend, and I get it from Rafa's perspective in the sense that it's a piece of him that he's letting go to, and you see the injuries with him now, and that these mainstays, men or women, it doesn't last forever. Every athlete has an expiration date. So
time's coming for all of us, Mitch.
It is, and we're gonna see
light thought for your day.
Yeah, great. That'll give me an extra spring in my step as we head into the weekend. The thing with Roger is we will see him at the Hall of Fame with Serena. I'm hoping that they figure out a way to stagger the classes, because I don't know, one big class with them might be crazy. But you have the Hall of Fame this year, not the mainstream names that we're used to, but two of the pioneers in wheelchair tennis. Esther Vergeer, the GOAT, more than likely, that's ever done that, and then Rick Draney as well. What's that going to be like this year? And I know it's always a special time to get tennis royalty together, and then you probably have the moments where I feel like where it's like, what am I doing here?
Oh, for sure. There have been many a time where I've been like, I feel like I need to, like, the Homer Simpson gif, like shrinking back into the bushes. That is me a lot of the time. No, I think it's going to be special the way that it always is. I had the chance to talk to Esther last summer at the US Open for the very first time, because I do some features for the World Feed there, and she is incredible. I mean, and I already knew about her resume, but to be able to talk to her in person, and she's just an incredible representative of wheelchair tennis, but just tennis in general. And so I'm excited for the fact that people get to know both of those athletes in a new and different way. And the thing that everybody loves about the Hall of Fame too is just the fact that, as you mentioned in Delray Beach, the legends descend on Newport. And it's a neat time for them. It's a neat time for anyone who loves tennis. If you've never been to Newport, people ask me all the time, what's your favorite event of the year? And it's the Hall of Fame Open side by side with the Hall of Fame induction. So come on down or up or over.
Down, up, over. We got to get you on the court with more NFL quarterbacks too. It's Cousins last year. We'll just keep, getting the breakdown of their mostly forehand games. So
I know. Well, you never know who's going to pop up at the Hall of Fame. That's the thing. And also, I'm just throwing it out there now. Chris Eubanks and I were supposed to hit for the first time at the Hall of Fame Open last year. I was supposed to be his first hard court hit of the year.
Okay. You got it up. You made it up for it there.
We made up for it. But then I think John Isner won a 7-6, 6-7, 7-6 match, and I didn't finish until it was too late in the day. So maybe, I don't know, I haven't talked to Chris about it, but maybe a Henley Eubanks hit number 2. We'll see.
Chris is an interesting guy. It's hard to get practice time with him now based on who he's hitting with. And I can tell this story now because he told it on the air. The day before he made his announcement of who he hit with last week, we were standing around our green room here, and he was like, someone asked him, are you practicing today? You playing? Yeah. Who are you hitting with? And he just nonchalantly says, I'm hitting with Naomi. Like, oh, okay. And I did a double take. I'm like, Naomi Campbell? Like, who are we talking about here?
You never know with Chris. You never know. No, that's awesome. And I'm so happy for him that he's doing so incredibly well. And I would also like to say that have appreciated my TikToks, and but it was like over a year ago at Indian Wells that I made a point to explain to people that the guy has a Rolodex. His phone contacts list is extensive in terms of clout.
Yeah, we hope and seriously though, we do hope Jamie Foxx is doing well. I bring this up because he's had the medical episode, looks like it's going to be okay, but I mean, he got Jamie Foxx to watch him play tennis. And I wanted to ask Chris, there was a moment there where it was the rain delay and it was, I'm great to see you. What's up? But it's like, I'm kind of working here. Like we can joke about that later.
Yes, you could see it shift. Like he sees the cameras. Yeah, it was a great moment. Good stuff.
Do you have any quick thoughts on, the most loaded field of any event in the year? Stuttgart is just insane. And I understand that there's venue reasons, but it's just nuts that round 1, round 2, you're getting top 15 matchups already. But any thoughts on that? We've seen Iga do well in her match coming back. Sabalenka is just a stud out there. Anshibor looking good again. Any thoughts on the elite of the elite at the WTA?
I mean, I'm glad to see them all back out on European red clay because, listen, as I heard a whole lot in Houston, the U.S. clay, and also as Stefanos Tsitsipas said, U.S. clay is like a unicorn on a skateboard. So, as we've heard many times between Charleston and Houston, clay in the U.S. is not the same as clay in Europe, and probably indoor clay in Europe is not the same as outdoor clay in Europe, but we're getting closer. And I don't know, I'm glad to see them all back out there. Tumani Carriol wrote a great article for, I believe it's The Guardian, just talking about the fact that it is kind of too bad that you have all these top players at this one event, and if you're not in the top, 30-ish or less, you're probably not playing this week. And so that's a discussion for a whole nother day, but really glad to see all these women back on tour, back on the court.
Yeah, Sabalenka looking great. I want to see Iga back at the top. It's been fun. And I just mentioned Sabalenka plays Badosa tomorrow. It's going to be a pretty good post-match handshake one way or the other. Big hug, probably going to set the record. We'll see. But something there.
I love both of them. And man, how far we've come, Mitch. Like there was a time where, it wasn't that long ago that there was that iconic WTA finals photo of them all sitting on the chairs, looking in different directions at their phones. And the fact that, I mean, even at the WTA finals this past year, we had Ons Jabeur dressing up in a Halloween costume to scare the number one player in the world as the number two player in the world, scares to death. They hug, and it just, there was a moment, and I think, you know, to your point, the Sabalenka Badosa hug, there was just, it's just really neat to see the camaraderie. And do we want more trash talk per Jessie Pegula? I'm all for that as well, but it's nice to see the relationships.
Would you say, and this is just the follow-up that came to me, Ons Jabeur, you've been around her more than I have, but it's like, I would describe it as like a friendly swagger. Like she walks in the room, she's comfortable with who she is, but there's like an extra pep in her step. Like it's chill in a way. It's hard to explain unless you've seen it.
Ons is a unicorn. I don't know how. I think it would be so hard to be so many things to so many people. I think that could potentially turn into a burden, but it's not for her. I actually just recently, I had a friend who did a pickleball sort of exhibition with Ons in Miami. And I commented on his photo with her, and he said she made the whole event doing. And Ons has that effect on people. And I feel like that could be a lot to carry, but I actually messaged her when he told me that story. I'm like, you made this person's entire day. And she wrote back, she's like, only, you know, that thank you so much for telling me, and, you know, only good vibes. And she really does sort of live that out on a daily basis. It's not contrived. And as you said, she knows who she is. And when she walks into a room, she has just this incredible star power, and the WTA is so lucky to have her.
Last thing with Blair Henley, you've been very generous with your time outside the tennis court. I want you to clear something up. How does one go about finding a hedgehog for the children? And do you feel bad about not giving Santa proper credit, or is that just this? No,
absolutely not, Mitch. I researched that hedgehog. I read hedgehog forums. Santa is not getting credit for that. Absolutely not. I did a lot of research. I don't like getting things that, and this goes for probably every area of my life. Like if too many people have it, I then don't want it. And so I was like, not many people have a hedgehog. So that led me down this long winding path to hedgehog ownership. And let me tell you, I was going to do an Instagram update on life with a hedgehog, because many people have asked, because I really put the welcoming of the hedgehog into the home. That was out on social media. I've become more silent on the hedgehog ownership side since, because owning a hedgehog has proven to be far more work than advertised, as to the surprise of probably no one. But yeah, I won't go into detail. They're dirtier than I thought, Mitch. So anyway, I'm happy my girls are happy. And listen, we don't have a trendy pet. It's a unique pet, and I'll give myself plus points for that.
You talk about being a contrarian. I don't know anybody that's even brought up who could possibly own a hedgehog. It hasn't even been on anybody's radar. So no, it was a cool story. And again, Instagram, TikTok, just a woman of very much in the social media department. So we look forward to kind of following your career with social media, but also with tennis. Blair, this has been a treat. Always one of my favorite times of my podcast here talking to you. So best of luck with everything. And we'll have to catch each other on the road and, you know, just tell some stories, the off-air ones, like the Rice Tennis, Fed Cup, BJK. But yeah, pleasure as always. Really appreciate you. You do phenomenal work, and I can't wait to see what's coming. Thanks again for joining Tennis Channel Inside In.
I love story time with Mitch. So anytime, Mitch. And also, I sort of left people hanging by saying I had a great Indian Wells post-match interview story. We're saving that for our next interview. Okay.
Okay, we will. Blair Henley, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming on the podcast.